Hello, everyone, or should I say good evening to this October evening version of Poetry Square. Poetry Square is our once a month, third Thursday of the month presentation from YubaSutterArts&Culture. And I'm your host, Diane Funston, poet in residence this year for YubaSutterArts&Culture. And I'll be bringing you three poets from just about anywhere since we're online now. We have an East Coast poet tonight, and we have two other California poets as well as myself. And I'll take you right into it. So I hope you have a good evening with us. This is our second of a series of hopefully many. So I was going to actually come in a costume, but it is a little bit too early for that. So let's start off with this poem. Halloween brings back spirits of the past, a yearly autumn rite of passage where ghosts lead me back to walk through the streets of my past. I willingly go back. Streets as familiar as my skin. It was upstate New York and crisp October days. The smell changed along with the leaf colors. The old oil furnace woke from summer sleep. Its octopus arms abducting reached into rooms where no one slept, where rest did not easily come to those who sat up in the night waiting for a sign of life from those who still lived in century-old houses. The big kitchen oven came alive again after summer heat and humidity shut its doors for the season. In autumn, its wide mouth opened to bake hearty meals and cookie treats for kids to devour wholeheartedly. The compost had grown rich over the season's worth of kitchen scraps that decayed and rotted into new soil. We turned it over with the rusted pitchfork and breathed in the fresh smell of open gardens or open graves. Crunching through fallen leaves, the weather was damp, the sky back there heavy with clouds. Maple leaves rained down and shiny horse chestnuts cracked out of green spiky shells for kids to collect. Autumn, season of Halloween, season of heavy scents and colorful leaves. Come, walk with me down those foggy sidewalks. And this poem is called Pattern for Autumn. The only sound is of acorns falling against the wooden shake roof, ping, plop, dropping to the deck in nature's disarray, a true pattern for nature to follow. The only view is sylvan sweet. Ancient oaks embrace big skies, ringed by mountains, formed by unrest, leaves setting in canyons, stirred by coyote and wind. The only mood is tranquil. Quail bob between boulders, blue jays chase titmice through golden fields dappled with rabbit brush and sage, swirled by seasonal streams. The only time is now. Past memories filter through canopies, leaves twisting to seasonal call. The future remains shaded. Poplars reach upward, willows bend to present space. The only time is now. This one is called Full Moon. The moon peeks from behind a curtain, bashfully plays hide and seek with drivers on the way back home through the mountains. After losing her for a while, surprise! She appears between pine forest, winking playfully and leading us homeward. Her sallow face moves beneath the veil of evening, turning towards the night. She boldly dances burlesque on the summit, then shyly dons layers again, rippling sensuously, gray flannel covering silver taffeta. Her cotton shadows reveal her organdy midriff, then cover up again, moving from modesty to madness, catching her breath and beckoning us once again. This is called Bones. I am a pile of misaligned bones, containing animal sounds within, howlings, the flutterings, the purr, those souls inside, now trapped, species unnamed, those long gone, the failed ones, too delicate for a harsh world, where takers take and skeletal remains leave questions in carbon, rising up through restless bone on certain unquiet evenings. This is called armor. So picture a set of knight's armor and how cold and how stiff that armor is. If I were a medieval knight, hidden beneath the battle apparel of impenetrable armor, you'd see a vent where my breath would escape in quick coming clouds, pent up steam from dragons I'd slain for you. The rustle of chainmail rusted from forbidden sweat, linking cold metal with salt tears, harder to make my move as unrelenting rust welds me stiff. My futile words reverberate in silence. This one, I don't know if you're like me, I love horror movies, have since I was a kid. And back in Rochester, New York, at 11:30 at night, Gregory the Gravewalker, kind of like California's Elvira, led us into the movie of the night, Saturday night, 11:30. Old horror movies. 11:30 Saturday night, after the local news, Gregory the Gravewalker, hiking through the cemetery with his jagged cane, would enter our small living room. Lights out, except for the glow of TV, my mother asleep in her bedroom, Uncle Lou and I in our weekly communion of English muffin pizzas and fear. Black and white classics, wolfmen who only changed at full moon, vampires who would sacrifice even the innocent for their drink, man-made monsters, the sorriest lot of them all, despised by society that did too little too late. My teenage Saturday nights, Uncle Lou in his 40s, we walked with Gregory, a double feature. Afterward, I'd steady Lou to his feet. He'd stagger to his bedroom. I'd make sure his cigarette was out. that he'd taken his meds. I tossed his beer bottles into the trash. I turned the TV off then, just in time to watch Gregory laugh his evil laugh. And this is kind of a ghostly tale. For those of us who love the written word, poetry, and literature, you may recognize some of the visitors in this poem. The visitors. There is a knock on my door, most unexpectedly, in a well-deserved moment of solitude. 2 women are at the door, their faces pallid, hair pulled back, distant eyes. It took me a while, but soon I recognized them. Sylvia Plath and Anne Sexton. I could see my front yard trees through their gossamer nightgowns. Ghostly and forthright, they walked right through me and sat on the settee by the fireplace. "Can I get you something?" I asked, feeling it was such a dumb question. "We're here to give you something," Anne said, lighting a cigarette. I was too taken aback to protest. "Virginia was supposed to come too," Sylvia whispered, but she was drowning in responsibilities. We nodded. "You're struggling between family and self," they said in haunting choir-like unison. "We've been there, many of us. Your sisters. We thought it might be easier in modern times, but once again, we were misled." "I'm happy. I'm well. My kids are grown," I said. "Why warn me?" "You have that room of your own, dear. Be rude if you must. Be selfish. Rest your mind. But do go into your room, your space, and write to save your life." A moment later, the fire surged a bit, and I was alone, left on the settee, a blank pad of paper and pen at my side. And this poem is called Witches' Pits. In a forgotten cemetery back east, there are deep pools of unmoving water locals call witches' pits. Legends say that women accused of witchcraft were buried at the bottom, broken-limbed but alive, as water poured in, covering guilt or innocence, with blue-green still water disturbed by an occasional ripple. Your eyes are witches' pits, deep, still, blue-green. If I look into them too long, I am dragged deeper into desire than I sometimes believe I can climb out of. I struggle against unsolicited desire that envelops me, but I fall, a body seeking a ripple from your touch, my guilt or innocence buried in the deep, still pools of your eyes. And my last poem for me, before we get to our guest, is called Ghostly Poem. I can see you sleeping in our bed. My empty space embraces you. You can't see the mattress breathing up and down like many times spent in our lifetime together. You may not feel my presence as I tuck the comforter around you. I have always been your comforter, you my cushion and pillows. I bury my face into your back, kiss more strength between your fingers, rub more courage into your toes. I am still with you. The scent in the room, the taste in your mouth, the last words you'll speak in the morning. Well, thank you. I tried to bring you a selection of spookier poems tonight to go with the season. And you're going to have 3 visitors, yourself tonight, 3 other poets. Our first poet, who will be up after me, is John Obermeyer, who comes to you from Berkeley. And he'll be our first in the lineup of 3 poets. And that'll be followed by Laura Goularte. And then finally, last but not least, Michael Zarnecki. And stay tuned, because this is just the beginning of our Poetry Square. And this is a place for the written word and for poets to read the words that they write. And it's, like I said before, it's a monthly venue, the third Thursday of every month, 7 to 8 p.m. in the evening, Pacific time. And some of our poets, as you'll see, are staying up late tonight because they're coming to us from the East Coast. And we have some others in the months ahead, too. So give them a nice welcome from your home to their home, as we are all coming to you from our homes right now.
Okay, we're in the second quarter of this football game. There will be probably a few TV timeouts and maybe some commercials. I'm John Obermeyer, and I think we're going to see a slide coming up, I believe, to kind of tee up my first poem. Is that right? Here we go. Okay, we did a little slideshow, and here we go. This first poem. Here we go. It's called Civility. I wrote this in 2016, and you might call this a scary poem, by the way, because it's about what's going on in our country. And I wrote this right after the election, but I think it's still probably relevant now. So if you could give us the next slide. There we go. Okay, into the poem. Civility. America is an argument you cannot win. Consensus is merely mirage appearing to you in the dry, high desert outside Aleppo or Adelanto. You can load both barrels of your Browning or Mossberg shotguns full of rhetoric and vitriol, but the dissent hordes will still advance upon your deadbolt locks, your gated communities, and your intelligent thermostats. The cadence of outright grievance will always flow as sweet light crude in pipelines from the black oil sands of the Alberta province. You cannot stop them. Red state, blue state, the nation blurs into a purple bruise, and the exit polls head straight for the exits. Your precious inner centrist sensibility will be torn from you by the jackals on each fringe. The middle ground is more dangerous than anywhere, a DMZ exposed to artillery from both sides. You and I once tried to sit down to tea and discourse, but the table leg was a bit wobbly. I folded a napkin in half to secure it, but you told me I was wasting paper. Next poem. Shantae, next slide. I'm just going to go ahead. This is called She Speaks to Me in Ampersands. And this is based on a friend that used to send me a lot of texts with ampersands in it. She might be busy. It might be the efficiency, 1 character instead of 3. It might be her way of saying to me that 2 words don't always go together so simply. Sometimes me and you needs a curlicue, a curving, twisty route that throws off expectation in its wild loops, but it still reaches the same destination. So this is a poem that I wrote in 2016 for my first collection called The Reassurance of Ghosts. And Reassurance of Ghosts is a Halloween poem, by the way. I was reading an interview with the late Seamus Haney, who was living in Boston for an academic appointment. And he said, living in Boston is like nesting on a ledge. The place I have here in Boston is not in any way an alternative to the life I have in Dublin. It is a transient arrangement. And I'm happy to say that this poem was a finalist in the James Applewhite Poetry Prize in North Carolina and was printed in North Carolina, a literary review, by the way. This is called Ledge. Rethink it, your life. Everywhere you've lived is just a ledge, a place you could have easily tumbled from. Your hometown is a precipice, you'll learn someday. What the realtor sold you is merely a coat hook, an excuse for the roof to settle on your head like a butterfly. An outpost of tongue and groove flooring to taste the sour crawl space and the sweet padding of your socks. Your bills will always find another address. The foundation cinder block won't mind it all, transient misery, and someone else's false siding. Everything moves eventually. Larger than you, the island of Bermuda glides like a migratory bird, transatlantic bird towards Namibia. As you may know, most of California's coast is no longer where it used to be. This next poem, and I'm doing some ums here. Hold on just a second. I want to make sure I'm on schedule. I'm moving too fast here. So this poem came from a book, the coffee table book I did in 2018 with the photographer Dwayne Newton in San Francisco. And this poem was inspired by a conversation we had about how it was to fight an urban fire in San Francisco. And I was able to read this poem to about 600 people at the Art of Fire Gala in 2019. So this is a poem about firefighting called Inside, and the epigraph comes from Seneca. Fire tests gold, suffering tests brave men. There's the slow swivel of the helmet before we destroy it. Monster, dragon, that bastard, Beelzebub. The orange-red ogre of every childhood dream. Ass to elbow, the hallway floor hump and spelunk downward into a basement. You carry half your body weight through every blind fog bend in the labyrinth. Dante had no idea of the noise, the locomotive's locution of collapse, and the load-bearing beams falling all around you. Take a seat, my friend, within the inferno. Let the maitre d' remove your coat, your silks, and your top hat. The rapture show begins shortly. It's like the Northern Lights, Pink Floyd lasers, and the devil himself at 150 decibels on the back stoop of a lion's mouth. I will one day attempt to describe the heat to you, but our language is so inadequate. I just wanted to show you here. This is the book called, I don't think it's showing up, called Siren Call San Francisco, where that came from. Okay, this is I'm going to read 2 COVID poems. By the way, COVID poems are fun. In Halloween, we can read COVID poems. This one's from April, and we may even have a picture to go with it, called Sourdough. And when you see the picture, you'll know what this poem's about. The picture of the sourdough loaf. There we go. So this epigraph comes from Ursula K. Le Guin, The Lathe of Heaven. Love doesn't just sit there like a stone. It has to be made like bread, remade all the time and made new. Sourdough. During the crisis, everyone was starting starters. There was yeast and panic everywhere you looked, but the kitchen was considered a refuge. Perfect golden loaves emerged like forest mushrooms on wooden cutting boards, on pristine marble counters, on Grandma Ida's fine china. As an antidote, as a domestic talisman. While waiting for the cure, we birthed the only perfection within our grasp, shaped with zeal and breathless certainty, and dusted in a kind of snow. I also noticed during COVID that I kind of lost track of time. So I wrote this poem called The Earth Does Not Know It's Sunday, which is also a COVID poem. The earth does not know it's Sunday, nor the waxing gibbous moon peeking out above the oak, a chalk mark in space oblivious. The succulents in glazed pots know nothing of this month. April rain arrives to no clock. Each flock thinks less of a season. They just find themselves aloft in a hemisphere. Any certitude is what they hear below them, a pulse of trees, whitecaps that signal imminent flight. And I'm going to wrap up with a poem called Sweet for the Moth, which is about moths, which I think is kind of fun just to do a poem only about moths. So I've got about 4 minutes here, I think. So we're going to do Sweet for the Moth. Let me go with that. The epigraph is from a book by Michael Majerus. For 1,200 years, silk production in the Western world was based on a single stalk of silkworm moth eggs, smuggled to Constantinople in a hollow cane by 2 Persian monks at the request of Emperor Justinian. So there's an English adage that says, if a moth flies around the lamp once, it's a sign of a postcard. Twice, a letter. 3 times, a parcel. So this is about moths. Drawn to light and the open door arriving from a dark shore, the moth, like subtle evidence, alights and takes up residence. It is the delicate dove who precedes the word, a friend's brief note, the soul's long-lost correspondence, a parcel's wealth of contents. By day, I leave the moth be, for it has no need to follow me into the world of brightly colored lies, where all we worship are butterflies. This poem was inspired to me by a twin. She had a twin sister who died, and I was inspired by these kind of matching wings. The fact that in moths and butterflies, all the wings are a doubling, a mirroring. So it's about twins. This is a sister speaking to her dead twin. Entwined within the womb, we twist and weave in a world of make-believe, sisters, twins. When light arrives to separate us, our death begins. She is Margaret, a pearl from Mar, the sea. As firstborn, we arrive early in March, the month of Mars, and she was dark crimson, marooned by blood in a far-off land that no one understands. Unable to share maize, ribbons, and bows, green velvet dressing, or matching clothes were luxuries, I suppose, compared to the difficulty of her off somewhere that we could not see, and how at age 7, almost 8, she was gone and I lived on. But she leads me now, as she always will. Our flight depends on matching wings, lifting in unison against the still night air. And my groom, he waits patiently in his room, for he knows in the dream my sister is the lovely young woman who comes for me, a nymph goddess of rivers, mountains, sea. My hands again in hers, the circuitry of outstretched arms complete. We spin once again as sister twins, a figure 8 loop, luxury of thread, like the silkworm spins. Thank you very much. I've enjoyed reading to you. Thank you for paying attention.
Ooh. I guess I'm on. Hello, I'm Laura Gallart, and I must say that time goes by faster than I thought, or perhaps the poets were so very good that I wanted to hear more of their poetry, but it went by so fast. So I think that Shantae may have to get the hook out for me and to make sure that she tells me my time. I am a California poet, and I'm a 5th generation Californian with an Azorean Portuguese background. My family came here during the gold rush. My great grandmother was a mail order bride. And about the time I really got into writing poetry was when I was doing family research. And so birthed the Kissing of the Bee book, which is kind of loosely about my legacy in California and Azorean culture, and myself as a journey as a woman. So with that, you can go to the next photo, and that is my great grandmother, who I had the pleasure of knowing a little bit. She passed away when she was 95 and lived with my grandmother, and I lived with my grandmother. So I got to know her little, although she did not speak English, but that didn't stop us from communicating. And this first poem is called California Bride, and it's about my great grandmother. Bones half grown, she rises from a ship's dark hold, gives herself up to a hard-handed miner, grows thin from miscarriage, fat from pregnancy, sings songs in Portuguese as she hurries from cabin to sluice box on small calloused feet. I remember the old woman, not the girl, a widow in black with thick stockings, heavy shoes, lived in the corner of my grandmother's kitchen, gluing broken dishes, always moving and praying, boiled her own egg till the day she died. The face of Maria Neves, I wear her eyes, speak in her voice. She is waving her hands, reshaping the air to tell me in broken English that life is no sugar. My second poem is from the Azore Islands, Flores Island, and it's a little bit about some mythological involved, loosely based on my grandfather who was from Flores Island. The place at the beginning. A wail rises up in her mind, turning her thoughts gray. In port, the ferry of return, she searches for her grandfather to discover the shape of his immigration and finds the planks gone, rotted. At the mercy of rough water and high winds, he rode, sinews pulling his dory, pulling his bones to breaking. She scans the distance, says his name out loud, Antonio Henriquez, waits to hear a voice, see a face. See, she searches for all the prisoners of thick mists, others who look like her, whose foreign tongues speak music to her soul. Beyond the wake of a rogue wave, currents and tides ride the back of a gray whale. She sees through the vapor boats whose nets gather the sky and let go. Fog falls, bearing dazed souls back to their home place. She falls with them. This next poem is Mrs. Madruga prepares her granddaughter for hard times. Mrs. Madruga warns her granddaughter about the blurry sun, heavy and hungry, the scarred vegetables, the ragged turnips, and how the garden understands the natural cycle, the quiet of slaughter. She shows her granddaughter where to place the snares, to listen for the chuff of breath, how to get tender meat by relaxing the animal, stroking it from breastbone to pelvis till it slumps in her arms. She teaches her granddaughter how to kill, fast, painless, with the edge of an open hand striking a blow to the bones, linking back to head, the snapped neck. She guides the chore of pulling out the shivering insides, the tug of soft pelt, quick cuts, each joint giving way under the knife, her blood-soaked hands cleansed by lemon. All the cooking in one pot, herbs and water, onion tears, green pepper, bones bumping bones, the wild taste of meat changing to something sweet. To more of a romantic poem, poem is They Meet at a Chamarita. And the chamarita in Portuguese is a Portuguese folk dance. And actually, my parents met at a chamarita. And this is my aunt and uncle who met at a chamarita. The port, dark and sweet, the swirling light of dance, his loosened, damp collar, her gray skirts unfolding, wrists and hands, the need to touch. The room rises and falls with their loose, hastening breath. Spring clutches the plum blossom. The girl leaves her family for the marriage bed. Behind pulled curtains, he watches her undress, her body edged in darkness. They breathe in the night fragrance of spruce and pine, wild lupin. Through half-shut eyes, she is calm and does not speak. Under his hands, her heart, like a bird's muffled flutter. Skin hums and slender thighs press closer. Shadows walk above their heads. They rustle and toss till light seeps through the window. Still, they linger on the paling sheets, halfway familiar, halfway strange. This is me, a queen. And what this is about, it's called the Holy Ghost Festa, and my poem is Festo do Espírito Santo, and they have the Holy Ghost Festa all over California. The Zorian community celebrate it. And what this commemorates is Queen Isabel is a queen in Portugal, and she was known as a peacemaker and benefactor of the poor. Apparently, one legend has it that her husband, King Dinesh, demanded to know what she was hiding under her robe, and because she was trying to bring food to the poor, and apparently her husband perhaps was against that. And she, when she removed her robe, instead of food, the bread that she had had under there turned to roses. So Queen Isabel is commemorated in this parade, the Holy Ghost Festival, with the Queen and attendants. And I was Queen Isabel for the day and very excited. But this poem is about a younger version of me. Festo de Espírito Santo. Maria Silvera studies the stained glass, the lambs and saints. She kneels and bows the host, fusing to her tongue the holiness of her sex, a scent of blossoms. A day to be the heroine, to be the queen, Saint Isabel. Curls wound from rags cascade her back, a mother of pearl crucifix from Ava. The long gown of satin and crocheted lace from her mother's garment bag. Beneath her dress, a field of flowers. She glides down the aisle and onto the street, a halo of glittering crown and velvet cape, side maids and sign bearers, little queens wrapped in frothy lace with missing front teeth flank her. Along the boulevard, they float like angels without bodies who wear white dresses. Sweet sellers of the Altar Society offer malasadas, plump and sugared. Women balance baskets of sweet bread and sway to the music of the brass band. Then come the sopas, a feast for all of mint-flavored stew with meat that falls easily from the bone. Find the little queen tired from standing very still or slow moving forward, asleep in her mother's arms, shadow of halo above her crown. Okay, this one is called Saving Myself. My ancestors are stones in the river. They sparkle. Their quartz veins glisten in granite. I wade carefully, feeling with bare feet smooth skinned stones. A muskrat swims by me, slick-backed, fur shining. Braced against current and slippery bank, I lose my step. I fall into the cold stream. A water sprite travels 1,000 years to swim through my bones. Minnows scatter. I drink the river. Deer breathe hard in the shadows. In the pines, a spotted owl chants, and an old scaly fish beats up from the bottom, then sinks back down again. I rise from the current, find shallow water, sit among the stones. In a mountain pool where a trout darts, I bless my reflection. This is a photo of my dad. He's actually in the poem, he's in the garden. And I think, God, how many minutes? I still have 5 minutes. Oh, I didn't. Thank you, Shante. What matters in the morning, when light fills my window and overflows the sun across my bed, I watch the mountains move closer, coming home with the daylight. A monarch flutters into the garden, rests on a hollyhock, peacefully opens its wings. I see something shimmer between the corn rows. It's my father in old shoes and coveralls, hoeing, tracking weeds along snail roads, standing up straight, head bent and focused on the endless furrows of his 86 years. The sun shines greenly on his hands as he listens to roots inch deeper into earth, watches baby spiders hatch, flex their legs. When he sees me at the window, I hold my hand up to wave. He holds his. We are palm to palm. 2 minutes. One more poem. This is a poem. This is my parents' home. It's Campfire Paradise, Pines, California. Of course, that was the big campfire, and it was destroyed. And this poem is called "These Stones." After the campfire, Paradise, Pines, California. I follow behind a backhoe, see the burnt scarring, a desolate landscape of ash heaps, vanished lives. In a vacant lot of cinder, I remember my mother's camellia tree, how she liked Gerber daisies, my grandmother's tea rose. Granite binds me to this property, the stones my uncle gave to my father to stabilize the embankment. I choose to believe something still breathes here. When I call out, I hear a heartbeat. Fierce rocks pull away from the ground, and I remember who I am. These stones on the hillside cover a stubborn root, a long vein, blood of my blood, alive deep inside. In the passage of my remaining days, I'm here to survive myself, grow wings to fly through smoke. Thank you.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Michael Zarnecki, and I'm the Easterner in the group. I'm here from upstate New York, actually Diane's home country, even though I never met her while she was living here. But yeah, I'm from upstate New York, Buffalo originally, and I've been writing poetry for over 50 years. And 26 years ago, I stopped doing other work just to make my living as a poet. And I've been doing that for 26 years now. So, and I'll mention a little bit about that along the way. But whenever I give a reading, I like to start with somebody else's poem. I like to honor the tradition of poetry. And since this is a California reading, I decided I'm going to read the second poet who was an influence on me. The first person was Robert Frost. The second poet was Robinson Jeffers. And this is a poem of his called Return. A little too abstract, a little too wise. It is time for us to kiss the earth again. It is time to let the leaves rain from the skies. Let the rich life run to the roots again. I will go down to the lovely Sur rivers and dip my arms in them up to the shoulders. I will find my accounting where the alder leaf quivers in the ocean wind over the river boulders. I will touch things and no more thoughts that breed like mouthless mayflies darkening the sky. The insect clouds that blind our passionate hawks so they cannot strike, hardly can fly. Things are the hawk's food, and noble is the mountain, O noble Pico Blanco, steep sea wave of marble. And that's Robinson Jeffers. And interesting that there's a hawk in that poem. And we just saw a picture of a hawk. And I was really pleased that when I first made my first trip to California in 2013, I was on a 48-state poetry tour. I was on the road for 14 weeks, and I gave a reading in each of the 48 states. And when I was in California, I made a trip to Tour House, Robinson Jeffers' house, and got to go on a tour of his house. And I was fortunate to be able to read one of his poems in the house to the small group of 6 people who were there in the room where he wrote that poem. And what a wonderful experience that was. Okay, the rest of the poems I'm going to read are mine now. And these are all spontaneous poems. I've been writing spontaneous poems for a long time. A little over 6 years ago, I started posting a new daily spontaneous poem on Facebook. And it's a poem I wrote in the minute, no editing, no revising. And that's what I'm going to read, some of the poems, some of the spontaneous poems. I think yesterday's poem was somewhere over 2,100. It's become a daily practice for me. So I thought this is a good starting poem, and you'll know as I read it. If it wasn't for COVID, today I'd be somewhere west, making my way back east. Pacific coast behind me, redwoods behind me, West Coast friends behind me, poetry readings behind me, poetry readings ahead of me, friends on way back home ahead of me. In this time of COVID, does anyone know what's ahead of us? And that's one of the 2 tours that got canceled this year. I was planning to be out west late August. I was going to leave home and get back early October, come all the way out to the West Coast and that. So, of course, that didn't happen. And I missed a tour all the way down to New Orleans, too. A year like we've never experienced in our lives. So much drama, so many twists, turns. I wonder, is it biblical-like drama? Is it Shakespearean-like drama? Or more like theater of the absurd-like drama? No matter. We are a long ways away from curtain coming down. And that was written a week and a half ago or so. Now I'm going to read from 2 different books. I've had 3 books out of spontaneous poems, and this is one of them. It's called There Is Only This Moment. And again, these are some of the spontaneous poems. And it's interesting looking at these and wanting to read these and just how much life has changed in this short amount of time. These poems are only, 2, 3, 4 years old at the most. And again, they're untitled and they're all spontaneous. Sun rises, light comes. Sun sets, light leaves. Simple. When hungry, eat. When tired, sleep. Simple. When lonely, smile. When desirous, smile. Simple. When arriving, hug. When leaving, hug. Simple. When thinking, don't. When feeling, do. Simple. Sun sets, dark comes. Sun rises, dark leaves. Simple. I've always said life is simple, but boy, like those lines, when arriving, hug. When leaving, hug. You can't do that now. And what a loss. And that's the biggest loss. I mean, I lost the tours and the readings, but that connecting with people. I've been influenced a lot by the Asian poets, Chinese, Japanese poets. And here's Basho. Basho comes into this one. Basho said, to learn about pine, go to the pine. To learn about bamboo, go to the bamboo. How do I learn about you other than going to you? You being there, I hear. How do I go there? How do you come to here? Always distances between, sometimes physical, most times some other distance. Can we bridge that distance, join somewhere between here, there? Maybe meet at pine, rendezvous at bamboo. I always liked that last line, how it came out, rendezvous at bamboo. And here's a poem that was written on the West Coast, very northern California. In fact, I read it in Trinidad, the library of Trinidad, and they put it up on their wall. I don't know if it's still there. This was a few years ago. Drawn to ocean shore, mountain ruggedness, two immense presences, vast watery landscape, ancient solid rock, constant movement, deep stillness. Where both join, there is power. And as much as I love the East, there is that power of the ocean and the mountains and where they meet. And I so miss having not been able to get out there this year. Dig deeper, go further, further down, further in, further beyond, ever imagined amazements may be waiting. And one final one from this book. When life is on right path, small synchronistic events occur almost continuously. And again, I really feel so strongly about that. When you're on your right path, things occur. Doors open where you didn't even know there were doors, Joseph Campbell. And that was sort of something that happened when I made that shift from quitting other work just to be a poet. And then this is a book called You, and I've got just a few poems from here I'm going to read. And actually that cover photo is a friend of mine out on the West Coast, and that's the Pacific Ocean. So many walls separate you from me. Tradition, culture, prejudice, suspicion, fear, worry, lack of confidence, personal inhibition. Let's break down those walls. You from your side, I from mine, brick by brick, layer by layer, till nothing remains between us. Just wide open space where we can join eye to eye, hand in hand, heart to heart. And one of the things I learned a long time ago, decades ago, is I have a triangle foundation. And it's a fluid triangle. And the sides change length, shorter and longer. And the three sides, one side is nature. The second side is creativity, which for me is words. And then the third side is relationships, people. And one of the things I've learned ever since really that 48-state tour in 2013, one of the most important parts of that triangle is maybe that people side. And then that makes it just so much harder going through this period we're going through right now, not being able to go on the road. This poetic road journey, mountain experiences, ocean experiences linger, yet more so, people experiences. When I return, mountains will be there. Ocean will be there. Will people be there too? And we just don't know. None of us knows. I've also felt for a long time it's always hanging over our left shoulder. None of us knows when the time's going to be. Okay, one more poem from this book, and then I've got one last one to finish with, a recent one. And these two poems sort of tie in together. So again, this is written a few years ago, 3 years ago, maybe 2.5. When an intriguing person crosses my path, I can't let them pass by. I want to stop them, ask them to walk with me, to share this path I'm on, if but for a brief moment. So many times in younger years, those intriguing people passed by. I had no way of knowing how to stop them, ask them to walk along with me. Now, no big deal, just ask. More often than not, who I am intrigued by chooses to walk along with me, at least for a brief moment. Like I said, that was 2.5 years ago, maybe I wrote that. And you can't do that now. It's just not as easy to do. And this poem was actually written yesterday. And this is my final poem. And I want to thank Diane for inviting me to be part of this reading. I want to thank the Arts and Culture, YubaSutterArts&Culture, and Shantae for managing this whole program too. So, and thank you all for being here. And this is my final poem, and it sort of is an update of that last poem I just read. And this actually occurred last night, and this was my spontaneous poem last night that I posted on Facebook. This evening, walking in grocery store, a woman walks by opposite, looks at me, says, "Hello." I look at her, reply with my own hello. A couple of minutes later, I walk near her, say, "Excuse me, thank you so much for saying hello." Then I run my hand in front of my mask. With these on, it seems so few people ever even say hello anymore, like everyone's afraid to relate. "Yes," she says, "this has been difficult. This isolation has not been good for my mental health. Saying hello like you did is a step in the right direction. Again, thank you so much for saying hello." Thank you," she says, as we both then go our separate ways. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, there you have it. I want to say thank you to my guest for tonight, John, Laura, and Michael. And thank all of you out in the audience, and it's a big audience. Thank you. Thank you for joining us tonight. And remember that the next Poetry Square will be next month, the third Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific time. And for next month, we have Len Germanera, we have Tom Galvin, and we have Chella Corrington. And we'll see you next month. Thank you.